Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. I'm Elizabeth Townsend Guard. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School, and I just wanna quilt. So today we talked to Joann Kajfsaz. She is a former quilt shop owner, and she's Amy Reitzel's mom. So we talked with Amy, and when we talked to Amy, we wanted to talk with her mom afterwards. So her mom was generous and was really, really honest about owning a quilt shop, and it was a really delightful conversation. She owned a quilt shop from 1974 to 1992, 17 years.
I'm Joann Kajfsaz, and I'm calling from my daughter's home outside of Sylvania, Ohio.
Very cool. And what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
I grew up with sewing. My mother sewed a lot, and she made all of our clothes, and she knew a lot about fabrics and stuff. So eventually textiles and fashion and textiles is what I majored in college besides teaching home economics.
You did? Interesting. And you owned a quilt shop. When did you open your quilt shop?
In 1974.
Wow. Okay, so what did quilting look like in 1974?
Well, in our area, it was just beginning to get, I want to say popular, but actually it wasn't really popular, but it was getting more people involved. I had a neighbor that used to hand quilt for others, and she did it when I was first married. She was doing that kind of thing. In fact, long before I was first married. But there wasn't a good place in the area to get fabrics. And we needed a place that my husband and I could work together so that if he would get sick in the middle of the day, he could go home. If he didn't feel like coming in that day, he could not come in that day. So that was kind of the basis of why we started the fabric store.
And how was the fabric store different than today's fabric store? What was it like when you first started that fabric store?
Well, I had a general store that included quilt patterns and fabrics. One of the salesmen said that there were very few stores that carried both kinds of fabrics. And I had dress fabrics. I started out with basically dress fabrics and some quilt fabrics. But as life went on, it got to be more and more quilt fabrics and less dress fabrics.
And that was because quilting became more and more a thing as with the bicentennial and after. Is that what?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I'm saying, did quilting become more and more popular as time went on?
Yes. Well, of course, I helped create it to be more and more popular because I taught classes on how to do piecework and quilt, and so that was the big draw at the store at the time.
How much quilting fabric? How much cotton quilting fabric was there in terms of, for the store? Were there a lot of fabric people at that time, fabric manufacturers?
Oh, yes. I don't think there was as many as there is now, but yes, there was a lot of manufacturers.
And what about tools? When you first started, the rotary cutter wasn't around yet, right? Am I right?
Right. In fact, Checker Distributors sold me a rotary cutter, and I didn't want it. I said, I don't need that. And they said, yes, you do. You take this and try it. So I took it and tried it, and just dulled the blade right away. Wouldn't work at all. And I just said, nah, I don't want this. I think that they weren't even aware that there was a rotary mat that needed to go under it.
I love it. That's really interesting.
And there weren't good rulers at that point either.
Really? When did rulers start to be a thing?
Oh my. I don't really know.
Was there a lot of templates?
I think when I started teaching class,
Yeah.
no, very few.
Interesting.
As
So
I remember,
how were
we
people
didn't
making...
have another one.
So this shows my ignorance. How were people making quilts if they had no rotary cutters, no rulers, and no templates? Or very little? When you were teaching them, how did you teach them
I'm
to
sure
make a
you're
quilt?
aware that they.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, we cut a plastic template into the shape we wanted, and then we traced it on using a sandpaper board so the fabric wouldn't move, and then we cut it out with Ginger shears.
That's really cool. Do you think that by cutting it by hand, it sort of like do quilts look differently because we have all these tools now? Are we making something different because like we can cut things faster and is it different? Like has quilting changed because the tools made us change?
Oh yes, yeah. There are more people trying more complicated things than there was before. Before we were really copying old patterns, from when people just traced patterns on cardboard.
Yeah, interesting. So,
in fact, I'm into quilting because this lady across the road from me that quilted for other people, I would go over there. I like accuracy, and I would go over there and patterns. The patterns were not accurate. The piecing was not accurate. Mm-hmm. And I asked about it. She said, "Oh, they never are. But once it's quilted, you don't really notice it." Well, I noticed it. To use the templates and the cutter, then I liked quilting.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, the precision of it. Interesting.
And quilting, as far as I do, is mostly piecework. I don't do a lot of actual quilting as far as stitching the pieces together, stitching the bottom and the batting together. I do more piecework, and most of them are just laying around waiting for Amy to inherit them and make them into quilts.
You got a pile. You just keep making her a pile.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Did a lot. And those I have hand machine quilted.
Yeah. Interesting. So when you ran the shop, so first of all, this is very, I have never worked in a shop before until today. So I was there for 2.5 hours. I'm exhausted. It was really fun, but really exhausting because people kept asking all kinds of things. They wanted to know a lot of stuff that I actually knew some things, but other things I had no idea. So it was very stressful and fun. And so I have questions for you, which is how difficult, there's a lot of people that say that owning a quilt shop is a lot harder than it looks. Do you find that because your quilt shop lasted a long time. How long did you have your quilt shop?
17 years.
Yeah. So there's a lot that don't last 17 years. They come and go.
Right.
What can you help us get an insight sort of what it is like to be running a quilt shop? What was your life like, and how can we better understand the quilt shop from your perspective?
Well, life was was basically the fabric store that I worked there a lot of hours, and I used to say that we were a teaching place, wasn't it? A store that was a teaching place, and I had other retail places around me saying, "Well, that's pretty neat. You can teach people how to consume your product. I just have to get them to buy my product."
Yeah, right. That's
and there
very true.
In fact, to this day, I get a call, a couple, maybe 3 times a year. Somebody will call me and ask me a quilt question of how to do thus and such, especially mitered corners. I got one on mitered corners not too long ago.
That's interesting.
So they tracked me down.
How hard was it to figure out what fabric to buy?
Well, since I really loved fabrics, I basically bought what I loved. And I walked in the store one day. I had been out for lunch, and when I come back, there was a customer there asking one of the clerks. She says, "Who chooses your fabrics in this store? Who buys them?" And the clerk just looked at me, and I walked over and I said, "Well, why are you asking? What is your purpose of your question?" And she said, "Because they must like everything that I like, because everything in this store I like."
That's really great.
I did pick everything in the store.
That's great.
Nobody else chose anything. Well, except once in a while, one of the salesmen would talk me into a case lot, but not very often.
That's interesting.
And I was never very pleased with a random case. I preferred to pick my own.
What's a case lot? Is just a random case of fabric? Is that what that is?
Pardon?
That's just a random bit of fabric. Is that what a case lot is?
Right. It would. Well, but then that day, they didn't have people who designed 6 or 8 pieces that went together. This was probably somebody's mistake of what they purchased, and they decided, well, if we group this together because it's all browns and golds, then sell it for less money.
Interesting.
But I learned to stay away from that real quick. Like the ones that nowadays are beautiful because they're designed to go together.
Yes, it's true. Now, in terms of the economics of the store, is it about getting people in the class? Like, how do you make money at a quilt shop? Like, what's the key to sort of, or is there lots and lots and lots of things you have to do?
Yeah, probably lots and lots and lots. If I had owned the fabric store on my own money instead of having borrowed money to run the fabric store, I would have a nice amount. But because I was on borrowed time, I was on borrowed money, I had to pay. I figured I was renting the money as much as I was renting the store space.
Yeah.
And it was okay. Toward the latter years, I had competition move in and cut way down. The first hit was when 2 of the factories in the town went out, and then Walmart moved in 11 minutes from my door.
Oh my gosh.
Sauter's Museum, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, came in, and they were only about 11 minutes from my door the other direction. And they catered into high quality and huge selections because they had huge money behind them. And of course, Walmart dickers back and forth between good fabrics and bad fabrics. You have to know what you're after when you go there.
Yeah. So so you really got hit by all of that. That's really interesting. And then you ended the store. What made you decide to close up?
Well, I don't know how religious you are, but God made me close up.
Yeah, tell me why.
Well, I never would have admitted that we were failing. I don't believe. I would have tried kept trying to find a way to succeed.
Yeah.
But my husband, whom we had opened the store because he was in failing health, got worse and worse, and he got kind of isolated in the country where we lived, and I wanted to get him out among people. So we wanted to move to a senior community in the Toledo area. So that and bankruptcy ended up getting us to move there. It was a wonderful, sad, horrible thing to go through.
Yeah.
I still have nightmares about it.
Wow. Well,
So that's not a good part. The good part was my husband got around more people and we became more friends together, and he got better health care when we did move.
That's really interesting. Huh. So let's talk a little bit about Amy. So what was it like raising a kid? And was she a kid when you had the quilt shop? How old?
Well, I had two daughters. One was 7 years older than Amy.
Yeah.
Okay. And she's not the creative genius that Amy is. But Amy was interested in most anything I was interested in. And I used to scoot forward in my sewing chair, and she would sit behind me, and we would chitter chatter. And every once in a while I would stop and say, okay, that's your pin. And she would take that pin out.
Very sweet.
So that kept me interested, and also kept me from not having to chase her all over the house, because she was a very ambitious child. I think when you were 6, I was into mostly clothing sewing at the time. And at 6 years old, she laid out her own Easter dress pattern while I went back to the store and taught a class. Excuse me. Then when I come home for supper, I checked it, and she had it just fine. So I said, okay, you can cut it now. And her dad said, oh, no, you don't get to go to the store. And she's under my supervision. And I said, just leave her alone. So she cut it out. When I got home, he said, you better go see Amy. She's kind of upset. So I went in to see her, and she goes, I almost cut a notch off, but I didn't. I backed up, and it's still there, but it's only hanging by a few threads.
Sweet.
So I said, okay, we'll do fine.
Totally.
So he started sewing very young and wanting to sew and do.
Yeah. Very cool. That's really nice. That's super nice.
She did a quilt for her 4-H project when she was a junior in high school. And of course, like her mother, she never starts out on something simple. She started out with dahlia.
Very funny.
So she made the dahlia quilt and did a beautiful job.
That's really amazing. That's amazing.
The leader, it was more than the leader. He was the 4-H agent. He said, you can't make a quilt for 4-H project. She says, yes, I can. And he said, you get it done in time. She says, watch me. So
That's funny. That's really funny. I think that it's not scientific, but I think that there are some qualities about quilters that are kind of consistent. First, I think we're overachievers. We think we can do everything, and sometimes we can. Would you agree with that one?
Yep.
Yeah. Super creative. Even if you think you're not creative, you're still being creative. I think that they make things that are about cuddly, lovey things. So there's like kind of kindness, whatever other thing. It's like there's kind of like you're sewing love. There's something about a quilt that, like, I think it's more than just the sewing. You know, like somehow something happens, transforms when you make the quilt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And your choice of fabrics is kind of a skill level. I know right after well, shortly after we closed the shop, I lived near Hancock Fabrics.
Oh, yeah.
And they were having a Christmas program, and I was there watching it. And one of my customers, ex-customers, came up to me and she said, "Would you help me?" And I said, "Well, sure. What do you need?" And she said, "Nobody can help me figure out what fabrics go together like you could."
No.
I said, "Come on, what do you want?" And we started with her goals and stuff like that. And so the big fabric stores, which are not quilt shops, do not know how to guide people to select fabrics.
Yeah.
Now, the quilt stores do. And the quilt stores, I think, in general, do a fabulous job of guiding people. But they also teach them how to do those things.
Yeah, it was really interesting today because, I just experienced it. I've only been there 2.5 hours. But it was interesting to see that, like, people were like, it was like they trusted you. They needed your help. It isn't just like, you're not just there to cut fabric or ring up the cash register. It was like, I'm a little bit intimidated, or I'm a little bit lost, or I need a second pair of eyes. Like, you're really there as an artistic, like, support team.
Right.
More than just quilting, right? Like, I never really, because I just didn't think about that. All day long, people were like, "Do you think this gray goes with this thing?" Or, "How much do you think I need?" Or, like, it was very sweet. It's a kind of, I don't know, they trust you. It's really interesting,
Quilts become part of a family.
Yeah.
Because they trust Mama Bear.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was really interesting. I think I'm a little hooked. I don't know. I'll see if I'll have time to do more of it. But it was really interesting to see, and how people shopped, and when they were confident, when they got shy, and all that. It was really interesting to watch their process of thinking about things.
You think about it in a different way.
Really different, yeah. Now, one of the questions I had is when you're buying, I want to know, we just have a little bit more time, but the economics of it. So, with the bolt of fabric, is the wholesale price of that usually half of when they were having a sale for 30% off or 70% off? Is the store still making enough to what happens with these sales? Because that's what was happening today, is that we had a sale of mostly 30% off and then a group of 70% off.
Well, it's probably just like any other store. You have to create enough to pay for all your utilities and your help and everything else. And the 50% off when I was selling fabrics was the basic quilting fabric was $3.99 a yard.
Wow.
It's basic quilting fabric's probably $12.99 now.
Yep, that's what we're seeing today. So if you take 30% off of that, are you still making any money at the quilt shop?
Yes, because you paid 50% of it, but you also paid for shipping.
Yeah. So you kind of breaking
at
even?
$12.99, a better leeway there for being able to cut it 30%, because you're getting more to pay for your shipping than when you were making $2 a yard.
That's really interesting.
That you're only making $1. That's not going to bring you in.
Yeah, so those sale, when they're just trying to get rid of stuff when they're putting it at 70% off, or at those kind of, you're really just are you trying to just recoup your cost, or are you even taking a hit on it?
You're trying to recoup your cost if possible, but you also need to make room for the new ones that you already ordered, and people that frequent your shop expect to see new things, and the owners expect to see a flow of new things, so they can keep up with all of the magazines and the YouTubes and the everything else that's out there now.
It's a lot.
Everybody about things. Classes aren't quite as critical because of the YouTubes, but it's good to have that hands-on person you can ask about.
Yep. It's really interesting. Well, we're going to be talking to shops over the summer and learning about stuff. And I would love to come back and chat with you about what I'm learning, kind of as my mentor of like what I'm finding, and you can help me figure out what else I should be asking, because I probably don't know the right questions to be asking. So could we have another session sometime? Amy, I'd love to have you part of it too, where we talk more about what we're finding and you could help me think through other questions. Does that sound okay?
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to her.
Awesome. Well, people keep saying they want short ones, so we're gonna stop very shortly so that we're reasonable. I just am really delighted. This is just so great. Amy, can you send me a bio of your mom? A bio of your mom so I can make a page for her, and anything else that she'd like to include on it. We didn't really get to her quilt, any kind of craft or quilting for her, but we'll do that. We'll do a couple more sessions if you guys are up for that. We learn more. Because the theme I'm hoping to have is, we're having different themes. We're still thinking it through. But I would really like to understand the anatomy of a quilt shop, to really understand the different aspects of it. And I think you guys could really help me keep on the right track with it. So that's all I know.
Okay,
I don't know how you did it for 17 years. I'm just wiped. And they're like, well, can you come back when you finish your interview? I'm like, I don't think so. I think I need to take a nap.
You entered it without experience, so.
Oh my gosh. It was the thrill, the excitement, the pressure. There's a lot of pressure. Everybody was waiting around. And then finally, because it was discount and we had to do all this math, and it was like, okay, well, you have to, you add this up while I cut this. So I don't know that's not what you're supposed to do, is have the customers add up the bill. But, things were falling behind and there was stuff happening. So, I don't know. It's very interesting.
It was a good experience for you.
It was great. I'm addicted. I don't want to own a quilt shop. Don't get me wrong. That's too much pressure. But, I don't mind coming and hanging out. It was fun. It was really fun. So what a fun space. And making that so people feel like they're part of a community is really a big deal. It's so much more than just the fabric or there's so much to a quilt shop,
That's right. It's more than a regular store.
It really is. Well, let's talk more about that. Amy, can you guys sign up for another time again? And let's talk more about, maybe that's the next topic, is it's more than just a regular store. Because I'm really curious as to that part of it. Because I really do think it's different than a regular store. So, yeah, that'd be super great. I'm so tired. Oh, my gosh.
Well, I'm not going to say I was never tired.
Oh, my gosh. And it was so funny because I knew you guys were waiting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It was such an enthusiastic tiredness.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really is. You feel like you're really part of people's lives,
Yeah.
And that you're part of it and that you're going to be with them. Like, they're buying fabric that they're going to have to work with for, many, many, many hours. So you're sending off them to do, lovely things with the little package that they've bought at your shop. It's really sweet.
And many times they would come back and ask you different questions.
That's really interesting. All right, well, we need to chat some more. I can't believe I thought it was so ironic that I was running late today to interview you about a shop because I was stuck at a shop. How ridiculous is that? I was like, okay, this is a problem. So
there.
You've been there? Yeah.
I said, you've been there.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Let's find some time to chat some more. And I'm going to post this shortly. So I'll send you a link so you guys can review it. But I'm so psyched. Thank you so much for both of you for coming and chatting with me. And we'll play some more. It'll be great.
Sounds good.
All right, Fab. Take care. Bye.
Happy quilt.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
So this is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. You've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. We want to hear from you. Join our army, our quilting army. Go to our Facebook page. Suggest people to be interviewed. Suggest yourself to be interviewed. We are excited to hear from you. But most importantly, I hope you get a chance to quilt today.